Okay, firstly, I'll start with who are we? So in Tasmania, there are 3 NRM organisations, and we're the southeastern one. So our region comprises about 2.5 million hectares and has approximately half the population of Tasmania. We've got 12 municipal areas, also got 4 Ramsar sites. We have a World Heritage property, which is the Tasmanian Wilderness World Heritage Area, which we share with the other regions. It abuts all of our regions. And we have habitats ranging from mountains to coastal areas and a number of endemic species. So what have we done at NRM South? Fortunately, it's in line with what a lot of the presentations have had. And what we've tried to do is keep abreast of all the latest findings and advice in all the obvious places. So we attend webinars, we monitor websites, consultation with state government organisations. We've also tried to keep our staff up to date with the latest information and make them aware of the issue. And a lot of our staff are in the field, so it's particularly important that they're aware of the issue and they keep their eye out as well. So what we did was we've produced some internal fact sheets so that have got FAQs, which we'll update periodically as more information comes in. And we tried to follow very closely the reliable information and the best advice. The other thing we've done is keep our community informed of the situation via socials and our newsletter. And we've taken 2 approaches. So we have the potential impacts and encouraging people to stay aware of observations in the natural populations, but also we've been talking to the agricultural sector. We really focused on that key advice that comes out of the government department, which is avoid, record and report. So we encouraging our staff to not handle anything that might look like an infected animal and to make observations, record the time, try and video it if possible, and the location on that sort of thing, and report to the hotline. The other thing we did, and this is a slightly different approach than what all the speakers beforehand have done, is we did an internal risk analysis. And so I'd now want to focus on that for a bit. Because it's not on our shores at this stage, it makes it hard to sort of do a lot of the planning and preparation, particularly because we don't know where it might turn up, its extent, its magnitude, which species are affected and all that sort of thing. So at this point in time, we decided that we would clarify what our role could be. And a couple of reasons for this is, one, we've got to make sure that sort of we're on the same page in terms of expectation management. We don't want to be a hindrance to any organisations that have the responsibility to manage a response. And we also want to minimise risks, and that's risks to our staff, but also of spreading the disease. So at this point in time, we see our role as support the community, which is our community, but also government organisations and other key stakeholders as appropriate. A key role for us at this point in time is a conduit of information from government organisations like all the people that have spoken before me to our community, who are the people on the ground. We're also out in the field a lot, so we can have a role of observing, so if we see anything strange in the wild populations, and monitoring for anything. But the other key role as an NRM is we deliver projects, and much of our projects are focused on reducing threatening processes in wild populations and obviously sustainable ag and all that sort of thing. So continue doing our work. The other thing is we clarified our responsibility. And again, I emphasise at this point in time, because obviously things could change a lot. So we have 2 key responsibilities, and that's firstly to our staff to create a safe working environment. And so obviously we need to think very carefully about any risks that people might catch it, all that sort of thing, and how we can prepare PPE and all that sort of thing. We also have responsibilities related to our contracts with funding bodies, particularly the Commonwealth's RDP contracts, which we have a number of projects, and we have a funding deed with the state government, so we have responsibilities under that. So just to put that in terms of a time frame, so prior to an event that occurs in our region, which is obviously this time now, is keep abreast of the information, provide up-to-date, accurate information to our community, both internally and externally, and continue to deliver our projects. And while we're out there, to observe any strange behaviours in birds or other populations. During an event, we would try to continue to deliver our projects, but we would have to implement some very urgent risk assessments, for our staff and for the organisation. And the results of those assessments would inform our guidelines, our internal guidelines and our procedures to try and mitigate some of those risks. And in that process, we'd also identify any training needs that our staff might require. So I'm just going to focus for a minute on some of the initial risk assessments that we've done. There's probably two categories of risks that have been identified at this stage for us as an organisation. So this is very organisationally centric. So operational risks. What could be the impacts to some of our projects and our service delivery? So about 3/4 of our funding comes from projects, largely from the Australian government, and we're paid to deliver projects and project services. If we can't deliver those, we're going to have implications for our staff employment because most of our staff, the majority of our staff, are actually paid for within projects. So if projects are deferred or closed down, or we can't deliver services because we can't access sites, that's going to have implications for our staff. We've obviously got to be very careful about the staff's health and well-being and their risks. And also another priority for us is we're obligated to achieve our strategic priorities as an organisation, and there are risks that we mightn't be able to achieve some of those in the short term. There's financial risks that are linked to those operational risks as well. Can we deliver our contractual obligations? If we don't deliver them, we don't get paid. That has cash flow implications and implications to whether we have to, not have all our staff on board. We also deliver our projects through a partnership model, which means we have a number of subcontractors delivering different components. And there could be implications if we can't access sites that our subcontractors can't deliver some of the work, which means they don't get paid. And a number of our subcontractors are sole traders and small people, so that could affect their business. And if we are asked to contribute, which we certainly will try and help out wherever we can, the question for us is how we would fund those new obligations unless there was money provided, because as I said, our staff are employed largely from our projects. So the approach at this stage and going into these risk assessments was obviously be liaised with the funding bodies about what the impacts could be to us delivering projects. And I was interested actually with the newsletter that came out, the RDP newsletter earlier this week. It looks like Q and DAF are starting to consider some of these potential risks in terms of project deliveries. We would obviously have to liaise with our subcontractors about impacts to their contracted work and keep in communication, particularly to manage expectations, what we can contribute to, what's realistic, in light of our organisational commitments. So just some final comments. Probably a key thing that's uppermost in my mind is will we be able to deliver our projects if we can't access sites? And that has flow-on organisational impacts for us, as I mentioned. Certainly in some of the conversations we've attended, some of the meetings with stakeholders, there was an assumption that we'll be able to just divert staff holus bolus to help on this. And while we may want to, there's practical implications of that. The other thing that's a concern for me is the realities about what will happen after an event too, our ability to recover species and populations. And I'm sure everyone in the room is aware that we need to be realistic about what we can do and obviously use evidence-based approaches. But I've certainly been in meetings where there's a lot of enthusiasm about what could be done, but I think, yeah, we need a lot of realism about it. And the other concern we have is the funding environment. Obviously, a lot of money has been put onto this issue, and a lot of it's about the planning and or everything that's been spoken about before. But how much will be available for actually trying to recover some of these natural or wild populations? And particularly in light of the fact that reducing threatening processes to some of these wild populations is a very expensive exercise. It's a long-term issue. It's a long slog. It's not resolved very quickly, and it's not funded very well in relation to other types of funding in the economy. So it's going to be an interesting space. Thank you.